Okay, in the last demo, we got through our conversation about how to get the body all squared away, at least as a beginning. And we talked about the font shorthand property. And now we need to move into styling a lot of other stuff. So this is where we are kind of right now. And one of the easiest ways to help beginners understand how to do this is to start to create a document outline sort of in CSS, similarly to the way that the document outline is in the HTML. And you see here I have the major sections collapsed, and I don't have footer collapsed. There we go. And one of the things that I want to show you that's kind of nice in Komodo Edit that you can do is right now I keep punching back and forth between this index file and this styles file. Well, one of the things that I can do in Komodo is if I want to collapse my places over here like that, I have more space. I can also go, let's open this up even more perhaps. I can also go up here to view, and I can tell it to move to split view, and it's going to split it top and bottom. But you'll notice that index is on the bottom. I would want index to come first. If I rotate this, index is going to be on the right side, and I actually want the HTML on the left side. So I'm going to undo what I just did by going back up to view and say move to split view again, and it basically, it's sort of counterintuitive, but it undoes what it just did. And instead, I'm going to move this HTML file. If I click and hold and drag, you see this little blue marker, and if I drag it so the blue marker ends up on this right side, now I've changed the orientation of styles being first, index being on the right. Now if I go up to move to split view, you see that the HTML is on the top, and so now if I say rotate split view, then my HTML will be on the left and my CSS will be on the right. Okay, and then if you wanted to see how to do this also in Windows, it's actually, this is my Windows virtual machine right here. I'm moving it around, okay? In fact, let's simplify it a little bit, and so that that's the only thing that's up there. And what you would do is choose the hamburger icon, and you go to view right here, and then you would go down just like we did before and say move to split view. And then as long as the index is on the top, then you're okay. In this case, I didn't have to move anything around. So as long as that index shows up on the top, it should show up properly on the other side, on the side that I want it to when I go and I say view, rotate split view. And you see here I've got the HTML on the left and the styles on the right. Now I can also go ahead and close my places, and then I've got the same setup on PC as I do on the Mac. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize that and keep on working in the Mac side of things. So we'll go into our Komodo edit. Now we can start making our document outline in CSS with our empty rules. So what we're going to do first of all is just take a look at the way that this section is collapsed over here. So we've got the first section, and it has an ID assigned to it called banner, and we have a second section whose ID is assigned to it called content, and then we have the footer. And if you were to expand these, you would see that there's a bunch of stuff inside of it. But first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create comments over in our CSS to address the major sections. And the reason I want to do that is because, and I'll show you how the comments are made, is because this way it'll be really easy for us as coders to see this and find our sections really easily, but the browser will just read right over it. So the way you make a comment in CSS, I mean, we already showed you how to do it in HTML, but it's different in CSS than it is in HTML. And so in CSS, you start with a /**, and then you end it with an **/*, and then anything that is put in between is ignored by the browser, but we can see it. So I'm going to put a comment that says, I'm going to call it the ID name, so it's banner. Okay, and I'm just going to keep it really simple like this. Okay, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come down here several lines later, and I'm going to change that to content because that's the other one that we've got. And then down here, I'll paste it again and I'll change this. I'm getting rid of the ID or the hashtag, and I'm changing that to footer because footer is just a tag. It's not an actual ID that I'm writing. And if I wanted to be really explicit here, I could say section banner and section content. Okay, and I'll explain why I did not put a space in between. There is a reason I did not put a space in between right there. Okay, so the first one that we want to make is we want to make a rule for the banner section. All right, we describe it when we're speaking in English by saying it's the banner section. Well, but the way that the CSS rule has to be written is, first of all, we need a selector that is based on a tag. So we have section, but we need to say which section it is. And if we're going to tell it that it is the section whose ID is banner, then we don't put a space, we just put a hashtag, and then we say banner. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my opening and closing curly braces, and it auto indents for me. I'm not going to type any rules here yet, but I want to explain something. If I were to put section space and then hashtag banner, by the way, hashtag explains that it is an ID. If that were a period, it would think that this was not an ID, but a class. Okay, it'd be looking for any instance of the banner class, not the banner ID. But it is in fact an ID, so for IDs we always use a hashtag, or hash mark. So if I have a space here, then what this is actually telling the browser that it's looking for any instance of the banner ID that is nested inside of section. Well, we can see that the ID banner is not nested inside of section, it's actually applied to section. So for that, we do not want a space. That way it'll properly read it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this because the content is the same. It is a section whose ID is assigned to content. So I'm going to paste that down here, but I need to remember for sure to change the word change the word banner to content. Okay, and then down at the very bottom in the footer, I can come down and I need to type just footer because footer is actually the name of the HTML tag that is over here. Therefore, that is the name of the selector. Okay, so now we have some empty placeholders. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and create the outline for the things that are going to exist inside of this banner section, as well as the content section and so forth. So I'm going to expand in my HTML view, I'm going to expand the banner section, and we're going to look at what we've got in there. So it looks like we've got an article, okay, and then we have a nav tag. So those are our two next level tags. So if I collapse article and I collapse nav, you can see them more clearly as two things that are on the same footing. All right, that they have the same hierarchy as nested elements underneath the section banner tag. So what we're going to do is come over here. I'm just going to copy this section banner. So the thing that's nice about that is that if I know this is spelled right, then I'm not going to potentially duplicate, or well, I'm not going to potentially make spelling mistakes. So over and over again. So here we can go section hash banner and then put a space because article is a descendant, it's a direct descendant, it's a child of section banner. Okay, and by the same token, I can also come down here and say nav right here. Okay, because we have article and nav as the next levels. And if you wanted to also go ahead real quickly, just to be really succinct, I'm going to put another quick comment. I won't make it perhaps as big as the other one. And here I'll just say article like that, perhaps. And then I can copy this and then come down here and I can say nav. And so it sort of calls itself out a little bit more that these are, inside of the section banner under article and under nav. Okay, and then if you wanted to expand article and see what we've got inside of there, we have a header, it looks like, and then we also have an aside. So let's go ahead and create the space for that. And the other thing too that you could do is I'm going to come over here and I could take this and I could tab that in. You don't have to. It's not something that is like an absolute requirement, but it does help you understand visually where things are in terms of the placement of the hierarchy in your HTML too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to copy this article, and I'm going to come down below and I'm going to paste, and then where it says article, after that I'm going to go ahead and say header, because I'm looking for the header inside the article inside the section banner. And then I'm also going to copy that, and instead of header this will be aside. Okay, and then again I'm going to tab these in because I can. All right, so that it's really clear that those are sort of in the HTML anyway, that they're nested under article, and it just starts to become a little bit more apparent, you know, what the structure is. I think that that's helpful. And then I could go as far as the image. I know for a fact if I were to take a look at my example that I showed you that's over here, I know for a fact that I'm going to do something with that image. All right, it looks like it's got like a circle around it, looks like it has a drop shadow, so I know that I'm going to probably be doing something specific to that. So I might as well go ahead and inside of that header I know that I'm going to have an image that I'm styling. So I'm going to say that inside of the header there is an IMG that's going to get styled. And again, if I wanted to be consistent, I could tab that in as well. All right, you don't have to do the tabbing. It might just be kind of ugly and weird for you. It's really up to you. Okay, and then I'm going to leave the H1 off. I'll just leave that alone for now because I know that there's only one H1 anyway, and so I can always just create one H1 somewhere else. The other thing too now is that I can open up my content section, and it looks like I've got a bunch of articles. Well, again, if you were to look at the example, you would notice that the articles have a lot of stuff in common. Like they have the same padding, the same margins. So that would tell me right off the bat that the articles, for instance, are going to, the articles that are inside of content are going to have very similar styling. So what I might want to do is come down here under section, and I'm going to get under the content section, and I'm going to create something that is specifically for article, any instance of article inside of the content section. And I'm not specifically going to make it about the individual ID, about ID goals, ID miscellaneous, and so forth, at least not yet. And then if I wanted to be consistent, I could also do this, where I create a comment here, and this would be called article, not nav. Okay. Now, if I expand any single one of these articles, we have a header, H2, H3, paragraph, a bunch of text stuff that I think for right now, I'm going to leave that alone. We'll come back and we'll get into that more specifically. I don't want to build too much of this out because I also don't want this document to be too difficult to look at with a bunch of empty rules. But one thing that you will notice, as I said before, is that we do have specificity with about, goals, miss. If we decide that we're going to style any of these individually, and if you look at this example, you can already see that I did, because I've got one that is orange and the other two are blue. We'll come back later and I'll show you, you know, after the fact how we can do something like that. Okay, and then with the footer, if you look at the footer, we have some paragraphs and we have some anchor tags in there. We don't need to worry about that right now. But what we can do now is we can, with our document saved, is take a quick look here, refresh the page, and now if I click somewhere like on the main content section, I have an empty rule ready to go. All right, so in the next video, I'll show you how you can start styling all of these sections, okay? Just by clicking in there in the inspector.